Today's character of the Passion we want to focus in on is Simon of Cyrene. We first encounter Simon during the Way of the Cross. Being compelled by the Romans, he aided Jesus in carrying his cross to Golgotha, the place of his crucifixion. And while we don't know much about Simon, from the little we do know, much can be gained. Firstly, the mere fact that he was present at the Way of the Cross as an onlooker is astounding. Sure, it's of course scandalous that most of his closest disciples fled, but ask yourself, what would you really do? If you were known to be associated with Jesus, let alone you were an adult Jewish male, to be seen near or even sympathetic to him could have meant your life. Those that plotted for the death of Jesus would surely come after you. This is something amazing and provocative to think about then, for we see figures like Simon of Cyrene or even John the Beloved walking about freely, staying close to the suffering heart of Christ. Was Simon, like John, a follower of Christ? Or was he merely curious of this man they call the Messiah? Some even theorize that perhaps these men were actually much younger than the other apostles, which would have meant they were not perceived as much of a physical threat to the Jews or Romans, allowing them to be present. Whatever the case was, though, what an absolute risk they were taking. A risk that ultimately threw Simon right into the thick of it. What belief and what love they bore, whether intentional, like John, or whether perhaps not, like Simon. Which brings me to the second and third takeaway, Simon's service. This last week I've been reading an amazing book that recently came out called From the Depths of Our Hearts. It's co-authored by Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI and Robert Cardinal Sarah on the beauty and the necessity of a celibate priesthood, how Jesus intended it. And in Benedict XVI's section, simply called The Catholic Priesthood, he has a beautiful reflection on what it means to serve Christ as a priest. But I think this reflection also speaks profoundly here to Simon and to all of us as followers and servants of Christ. I quote for you. Lastly, two other aspects are part of service. No one is closer to his master than the servant who has access to the most private dimensions of his life. In this sense, to serve means closeness. It requires familiarity. This familiarity also involves a danger. When we continually encounter the sacred, it risks becoming habitual for us. In this way, reverential fear is extinguished. Conditioned by all our habits, we no longer perceive the great, new, and surprising fact that He Himself is present, speaks to us, gives Himself to us. We must ceaselessly struggle against this becoming accustomed to the extraordinary reality. To serve means to draw near. My brothers and sisters, let these words seep into your heart. Let them press upon you, just like the cross that pressed upon the shoulders of Jesus and Simon. As baptized Christians, we are servants of Christ. We are ones, just like Simon, who are called to carry our own crosses with Jesus. And in carrying this cross with Him, we are close to Him, whether we realize it or not. As Benedict said, to serve means closeness. It requires familiarity. So let us then resolve to be familiar with Christ this week, to consciously will to pick up our crosses and walk with Him, to make sure that we're praying daily, to console His sacred heart. There is a temptation here, though, probably just like one that Simon himself had. It's to deny carrying our crosses, to not pray fervently in this time, to say, not for me right now, thank you so much. I'm just going to watch from a distance. I'm super comfortable over here, very much safe. Thanks, but no thanks. What is this, brothers and sisters, but to fall into that dangerous habitual apathy that Benedict speaks of in this book? So what a perfect opportunity I think it is, brothers and sisters, in this crazy time we're all in right now, when we've all been forcibly awakened, expelled, and exiled from our daily and life routines, to respond to the call and scandal of the cross. Because really, we ought not to have any fear. Jesus tells us all the time, be not afraid. Because we're on the other side of the resurrection. We know how this entire story, right, this real story of our salvation ends up. He raises from the dead. He conquers sin and death, takes our crosses, takes our suffering, transforms them, and brings them into Himself. Even those crosses and burdens we carry right now, brothers and sisters, He tells us so many times, you must deny yourself, pick up your cross, and follow me. How familial and how special it is then to be invited, just like Simon of Cyrene was, to carry the cross of Jesus Christ, to carry it with him. Because ultimately, it's ours too. So today in your prayer, put yourself in Simon's shoes, and let those words of Benedict XVI rest upon your heart and resound in your ears. To serve means to draw near. May God bless you, and may God keep you.